Welcome back to Inside Personal Growth. This is Greg Voisin, the host of Inside Personal Growth. And I have Shannon Bryne Susko, actually, and she has a book called Metronomics, and it's one united system to grow up your team, company, and life. Shannon, you're joining us from Whistler in British Columbia, and we were just talking about how great the snow was. So kudos to you. I wish I was there skiing. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful sunny day here. And yes, the snow is fabulous.
Well, I envy that because it's been a while since I've actually been up to the snow. But for my listeners, I'm going to let them know a little about your bio before we actually get into the questions for the podcast. Shannon has more than 20 years of experience building and leading high growth technology companies in the financial services industry. She co-founded and served as the chief executive officer and led the sale of 2 companies in less than 6 years. She was recognized by the top 25 most inspirational women in Canada in 2020, the top 100 most powerful women in Canada in 2018, and one of Canada's top 40 and under 40 in 2000. I don't know. Are you still under 40?
No, I'm not, but I was really young to receive that recognition. So when people say it, they're like, wow, you must be really old.
So this was an award she received for Canada's leading women entrepreneurs in 2006. In addition to her coaching company, she's a best-selling author of 2 books. We're going to be speaking about Metronomics, and we'll put links to her other books and resources as well, and to her website. So for those of you who want to get to Shannon, she offers free and paid workshops year-round, and personally and through partnered associations. And it's metronomeunited.com. There'll be a link for all of my listeners. That's metronomeunited.com. That's where you can learn more about her books, her trainings, her workshops, and so on. So, well, it's great having you on because, one of the things that you start the book off with, and it's an introduction that you say that most good business people read lots of business books. We have lots of business authors that come on here. Everybody from Marshall Goldsmith to Ken Blanchard to you name it have been on the show. And they all have great ideas, right? They all have great ideas. And most business people, when you ask them, Shannon, how many books are by your bedside? Oh, I have 5, 6, 7, 8. And you say, well, have you read any of them? And they go, yeah, well, I'm reading like 3 at a time, right? And yet they still are struggling to improve what I call the metrics of their business. In other words, if you were to measure everything, how's everything going? And you state that it's not in the what, but it's in the how. Could you please tell the listeners why Metronomics is a book that provides the how in putting it all together that'll help them or make them grow their businesses easier?
Yes, that's a great question to kick off with. I was a crazy, and still am, business book junkie. I love business books. And, when I was struggling with just figuring out how to unlock our first organization that we were growing up, we started reading lots of business books. I started reading them by myself, and I was doing like 4 a week. But the key was, so that was the what, and we had to take out of that how we're going to leverage each one of those things into a repeatable framework, playbook, something that was time bound, that would sort of grow with the team side and the business side. The thing that I love, I meet so many people, they read so many books, they're going to, you talk about the books, these books and Metronomics and 3 Hag Way. And I go, yep, all those things. Yeah, I did that. And I always ask, is it you did it once or do you keep doing it? And they go, oh no, we did it once. And so the key was to make this repeatable and to actually step through what we call, atomic habits is, individual habit stacking. And we talk about team habit stacking. Right. And so every step of the way is, how do we turn that dial and take the next step? So we're pulling it all together, and you can plug and play. But Metronomics, it's the framework itself that guides a team, CEO and team. Coaches can be involved, to drive it forward. I just want to finish this off with one.
I say something because,
Yeah.
just not to interrupt you, but, Jim Hewling at Franklin Covey is one of
Yeah.
the authors of 4DX, and Jim's
Yeah.
become a personal friend, and we speak a lot. And
Yeah.
what you look at the 4 disciplines of execution, really, that's what Metronomics is about, is really, okay, great. We want to know how, right? And that's what that does, is it actually holds for accountability. And I saw that throughout your book as well. It's
Yeah.
like systems, processes, accountability. But go ahead and proceed forward, because I think what we're going to talk about next is really, you were a desperate CEO.
Yeah. And I was desperate for the next statement that is really key, because everyone's looking for execution, right? The process and whatnot, but they get to the end of it, right? So when we first start out, and any business trying to bring it back in, we're trying to have execution working so we can forget about it, right? So we can actually focus in on strategy and connect it to strategy. And then we have a great process that we weave in for strategy. That doesn't exist anywhere else. The two things coming together in a way that actually lays out a roadmap for a team. And what I love is this CEO's in one of my roundtables. I was speaking with him last week, and he's been on the journey. And their journey goes, we call the foundation phase. That's getting execution, cash, and our cohesiveness with our strategy mapped out. That's the foundation phase. Once you get that and you get your cohesiveness to a certain level, you go to the foundation. You go from foundation to momentum. That's actually the secret sauce of this, because we tie in the strategic piece. We actually allow a team to execute their strategy, not just execute. And the CEO said, Shannon, and I've known him for a while. He's been in the roundtable for a while, but he's pretty tough, right? He's going to just say what he thinks. And he finally said, look, I came into this, I actually needed something. He goes, I wasn't sure this was going to work because I'd read all those books. I actually knew of all that stuff, but I had low expectations that this framework would bring it all together. And they've been in it now 4 or 5 years, and they've, stepped through the phases, and it's been amazing actually to see.
Well, I think one of the other things too is when you grow a company, it's about the talent that you hire. It's about the connecting of the dots, and it's about creating the culture. We're going to talk a little bit about that, because no matter how much of this you do, if you don't have the right people in the right chairs with the right strategies and attitudes, it's tough to execute on these things at best, and to create the cohesiveness. And I think if you look at some of the companies, and I'll just point to one that understands cradle to cradle, and to me, that's Apple. If you can take all these people from all these departments and put them together and really execute and satisfy a customer as well as they do, you literally have something quite special.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they don't have problems. I'm sure they got their own problems, but you state you went from the desperate CEO to a repeatable system CEO to the CEO plus leadership team coach. Tell us a little about the journey and how you evolved your system that you now teach to others to implement into their businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yes, I do describe myself, and definitely was a desperate CEO to grow. And the reason we were desperate is we were, literally playing whack-a-mole with everything you just talked about. If we think of culture, cohesion, the human side of it, the team side of it, strategy, execution, cash, add in, growing up your people, like it is whack-a-mole every day. And if you don't, and people are literally doing this every day, and they are grinding it out to get there. And so our goal in being, with the opportunity we had was, and with the coach I had at the time, I said, we've got to figure this out. And I actually asked my coach, is there not a repeatable playbook that pulls all these thought leaders tools in together that we can actually use over and over and over again, and we know when to use it? And the answer at the time was no. So myself and my leadership team said, you know what, let's build one for our company. The company was Paradata Systems from, late 90s. And so we started working through it. And we took the organization from where we were at that huge opportunity, but just couldn't get any momentum to actually building it. We built a global, it sounds crazy now, a global online payment service. We built it and sold it. And then we went, the company who bought ours, they actually not only wanted what we had, but they wanted the system that we were using that ran the company, right?
Yeah,
So we brought that in.
That's a very valuable, you look at the EBITDA and the multiple time sales, and you bring a system like that into a company that tightens up everything. It's like having a bunch of loose bolts and stuff. And you wonder why the car's rattling and shaking and nothing's running smoothly. And if you have the systems in process to know which bolts to tighten, which things to do, it works. Right. And in your chapter on goals, plans, reality, you tell a story about a company called Open Door and Alex and the founder. Tell us the story about this company and what are the three things that great teams have in common? Because without these great teams, it's not going to work.
Right. So if I can take just one step back before I answer that, I'll answer it in the context of this question. So the things that great teams have in common is, number one, they need a repeatable playbook, right? They have one. And if you look at any sport team that you follow, you're listening in, you're like, yeah, any winning team, they have this repeatable playbook and process that everyone commits to. They have a scoreboard that everyone knows and can see and knows what's winning and losing. They have a scoreboard, and they actually have a coach who understands the process. And it almost sounds self-serving because today in my retirement, I am a coach. But the big thing is that I'm not a coach because, that's what I do. I'm a coach because I was coached in a process. And that process, and I look back to that first company that we grew, the second company we grew in a third of the time and knocked the valuation out of the park in one of the top 3 deals on Wall Street that year. The thing that I look at is that whole process, the coach, the scoreboard, and the repeatable playbook saved us. We did it in a third of the time. Time is our scarcest resource. And that's every team. If I add a fourth thing in there, every team is up against time and timing. And so we were always about, how are we going to move it? I didn't want to spend in my second company growing up. And, we built it to sell it, and that's what we were about. And that was in our core purpose. But we did that. I didn't want to do another 10 years. I really wanted to show that we could impact the marketplace with what we had built sooner and get it out there globally. The first one took 10 years. And a lot of people are going, 10 years? I've been in my business 10, 20, 30, 50, 75, 3 generation. It doesn't matter because a team's a team. It's founded on people. Humans want to know what they need to expect. They want to know where they're going. They want to see if they're winning or losing. And it's really great. The coach removes the blind spots. So that's the big thing that really opened up, our eyes back then, but also today. What I do today in my retirement. Someone chuckled yesterday, "You're not retired," and I go, "Well, I am." Because I decide to actually do this every day. I love this. And if you'd use that as a definition of retired, that should be what we all should be saying.
Well, and I think one of the things you do well, based on my review of the book, is you help make the invisible visible. When a lot of people are out there struggling with uncertainty, you make the uncertain more certain, more predictable.
Yeah.
What is it? Volatility, those kind of things that people are looking at, but then they're not looking at the human side. And you state that Metronomics is founded upon best practices and that you have taken the what of all the greatest thought leaders and put it into one connected system. And I saw some of the names that you had that you used as the thought leaders. Can you speak about the how and the what of what you call your 3 HAG. I think everybody listening probably understands the BHAG,
Yeah.
right? Big, hairy, audacious goal. You
Yeah.
have the 3 HAG and the compound growth system. Can you speak about that?
Yeah. The 3 HAG is probably my naivety of, the secret sauce of all of this. And the 3 HAG, we read the books, we had our core purpose, we did the hedgehog, we had our BHAG, right? Our 10 to 30 year goal. And then we had our annual plan and, working every month and quarter. And it just seemed that, it was really hard to get everybody engaged in it, including my board of directors, by the way. So we decided, and at the board, we were going like 5 years. We kept picking 5 years, which you might as well pick 10 when you pick 5 years away in the markets we're in. And so we decided to pick 3 years. A 3 HAG stands for a 3-year highly achievable goal. And it sounds like you're just putting a line in the sand and you're writing down your goals. The 3 HAG actually has a few human parts to this. And in the very beginning, yes, you do gut out a 3 HAG. The 3 HAG actually is your connection and your stepping stone to your BHAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal. And so the 3 HAG actually makes that plan really human. Because when we ask people to gut out where they're going to be in 3 years, that's how you start it off. It's so simple. The human side of us, and we are very, we actually don't want to say that out loud and write it down because we might be wrong. And so instead, by just writing it down with your team, you got it. The human side of it is when we leave that meeting, we are actually leaving that meeting to figure out how to make that true. How do we make that true? How do we map it out? How do we map it out with precision, as you said earlier, but with enough that we can, as time goes, it's 12 quarters for 3 years, we can, find our path. And that 3 HAG is what connects, and you talked about culture and, the business, and we talk about the soft edge systems being the cultural, the cohesive, and the human. And then we talk about the business side of it. The hard edge is strategy, execution, and cash. And the 3 HAG is the thing at the top that actually keeps, that's what keeps it in balance. Because we get to connect what the things are, the things that flow through our business, the simple things, not the dollars, but the things that flow through your business in order to, connect it to the plan, the business side, and to connect it to the team. If we can't connect the team to the plan, it's really hard to win. It's really hard to win. So putting the 3 HAG out there and then bringing it down into what we call the 1 HAG, the 1-year highly achievable goal. Yeah, it's a play on that. And then into the quarter, and we're mapping out those things that flow through your business to make that true all the way out 12 quarters. It's game changing for sure.
Well, what I see by it and what I gleaned out of this was, you can take a team of people and give 36 months. And when I said make the invisible visible, if you were looking at proximal goals, right? The 1 HAG, the 2 HAG, the 3 HAG, right?
Yeah.
The proximal goals begin to look, instead of 10 years, a lot more manageable. It's like, okay, I can see this. So really the 3 HAG is in its steps what I call proximal goals. You've got a main goal, and then you've got the steps you've got to take to get to that goal. And then it's down to the quarters, and what are we going to do in the quarters, and so on. And you speak about the soft edge systems, and the purpose of this system is to ensure that there's a clear, known culture that creates the team's strong belief in core purpose. Could you speak with the listeners, the audience, about the soft edge elements, which are culture, cohesion, and human systems?
Yeah, I would love to, because without them, it's really hard to win. Or we see teams that win that actually, have worked so many more hours than they could have. So the way we look at this, if you think of a house, and we look at those 3 systems as, the cultural system is the foundation of the house. The cohesive system is one of the walls that goes up, part of that frame. And the human system is the other side. The very top of the house are the team leads and the leaders. And so they're all connected. If the cultural system, which includes, founded upon, the leader, right? The core purpose of the organization, the core values of the team, and then our big, hairy, audacious goal, that makes up our foundation. And if that foundation isn't solid, the house isn't going to stand up. We know that. That's pretty obvious. But in business and teams, that's for sure. The cohesive system is, I'm a huge fan of Pat Lencioni, and we just, sort of brought that work into our team, and it's brought into the cohesive system. It's laid out, quarter over quarter, what you need to do to grow up your system to a cohesive level, and then what we call, Team Trust 2.0, which is another level of cohesiveness. But without that wall, with the team being at the top of the house, people will fall out if we're not cohesive. On the other wall, the human system. The human system's all about, and it's an awful name, but it grew up from, Paradata. It's over 20 years old. The human system is all about actually clarity of what is expected of the individual and the team, and how the team will actually play together on the field. So clarity of role, clarity of accountability, coaching. We always say coach, keep, grow is in that system. And if that's not in place, our best team members are going to fall out. They will leave and go find another place where they can find that, right? A players want that coach, keep, grow. And so those are the soft edge systems, but it's a bit, sneaky, because it's the strength of those systems. They're soft edge because there's no numbers, and it's soft because it's behavioral. And the behavioral piece of this has to be driven by the CEO and the leaders, and then, of course, cascaded throughout the organization.
How would you address the whole issue? You look at tech companies. My son's an executive at Adobe.
Yep.
And, autonomy to maintain high levels of creativity within the groups are there, yet you're talking about all these cohesive teams. But when you're developing software and you have a bunch of software developers, and I'm going to use this as an example, it doesn't matter what company it is, if you're trying to develop new products, you need to have this level of, hey, go play.
For sure.
Go get creative. It doesn't matter if it's Patagonia or whoever it is.
How
would you kind of address that within the confines, if the company maybe doesn't have like this big R&D section of their company? Because it's easy to say, well, the quadrant is, here's the R&D section. These people over here, they just go play and they think up crap, and then we come and we try and build it and implement it, put it together. Do you have a thought around that at all?
I definitely do. And, the key to this, and this has always been, the way to grow and scale and to allow people who are experts in their areas to do their work, right? To do their best work, is that we need, as leaders, and this is why it's set up this way, as leaders, we're going to, do the work, the strategy work, the execution work. We're actually going to do the teamwork too, because we just talked all about the soft edge system. So that's all laced into how we do things. But we are guiding, we're guiding. I always say, everyone's on the bus. How many people on the bus? 1,000 people on the bus. We have a lot of buses, and we have to be driving in a direction, right? And so the leadership team's there is to lay the direction, collaborate with the teams. So in this process, leaders go out and collaborate with their teams before they come into like all the leaders coming together on that planning basis, quarterly, monthly, and of course there's weekly and daily in there, but that planning, they go out to the teams first to get all that info, bring it in. The leadership team will collaborate, hammer it out that day, but it's not like telling people this is what we're going to do. It's then taking it back to the team and going, here's everything that we've got. Here's where we've ended up. Let's have a discussion. Are these the right things? Big things, right? Okay, that happens. Yes, they are. And then it's who wants to own those things. Priority 1, priority 2, whatever it is. And then the owners get to take it away and do it. It's not anyone saying you have to do it this way. It's not getting in and managing it. It allows people to be creative and the experts in the organization who know their craft to solve whatever it is we need to solve or create whatever we need to create. And I got to say, I just got off with a client in that second meeting. I was with them yesterday in their leadership team quarterly meeting, large organization in the US. And we just did the larger leadership meeting, that follow-up meeting I just talked about. It was amazing to see, the leadership team present what we did in yesterday to build out their next quarter plan. And, they're in the morning, they go through it all, starting core purpose all the way through for the alignment. And then, put it out there to the 30 leaders in the call. And it's amazing to see the level of cohesiveness of that team because, we were virtual, everyone's virtual, but, anyone can raise their hand going, I'm not sure I agree with that. And here's why, and put their twist on it. And the outcome of that this morning was amazing. And they'll spend this afternoon going to the cross-functional teams, the ones who've got the expertise and they get named to it, to actually build out 13-week sprint lanes for those priorities. And it's not in stone. That's the big thing. This can't be like, this is the plan, we stick to it.
Right.
Stuff happens.
And what I like about it is that you're putting structure around, and as I was trying to allude to, potentially people that you're employing who maybe want more autonomy, but you're doing it in a way that they can get buy-in, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so buy-in to me is very important. I realize how important innovation and creativity are within these companies, but I also realize that there's got to be a master plan around which they're creating. And you have you called it the hard edge system, which includes strategy, execution, and cash systems. Speak with the listeners about these systems and why the coach cascade system helps to build high performance teams.
Yeah, so strategy, execution, and cash are, really, if you've gone to business school or if you haven't, execution and cash, those are the things that you focus on the most, you get it going, right? We get it going. And the strategy system, we got to be going somewhere, right? And we've got to, find our own dimension. And so we call those the hard edge systems because those are the ones that you can put numbers to, you can easily map out. Like they're very, very, like everybody wants to just focus on those ones, right? Because we can check it off, say if we got there, all that kind of stuff. There's some really tangible outcomes where the soft edge systems, not so much, but you need it and you need to be connected to the hard edge. So that's why we call those the hard edge. The coach cascade system is, I always call it the umbrella, but it's the ultimate foundation. And the coach cascade system is that in order to scale up, to grow up our company, we need to grow up our leaders and our team members into coaches. We have to shift from being an expert leader, because that's normally how we end up in leadership positions. We're expert at our craft. We end up there, and we need to be able to shift over. And not all leaders want to do this, and that's okay. But we need to actually identify the leaders who can shift over to be a coach. And what that means is that if the CEO, shifts and are aware of themselves, number one, willing to share how they're growing themselves, two, focused in on growing up their leaders into coaches, and then those coaches learn that and they share it with their leaders and so on. So we call it the coach cascade because it can't be, the CEO coaching the whole team. What I do every day, I'm a CEO plus leadership team coach. I coach that leadership team, and I'm coaching that team and helping the CEO to coach it out.
Right.
Because if we can coach it out, we are going to grow a whole lot faster. And if we stop doing and start asking the right questions at the right time, in a high growth company, Greg, as you know, that's really hard because stuff's on fire, like in a high growth company. Company I was just with, since I started working with them, has quadrupled their top line, and it started out already at 100 million. So they've added, they're just going off. And so they're in the compounding stage of this. And a lot of people, you don't want to stop and think about what question should I ask now? The plant's on fire,
Mhm.
right? But we need to be able to find the time as we grow our organization up, we grow our leaders up in order for them to be not in the business. They're working on the business, the strategy, and on their team members, growing them up. That's where the balance needs to sit.
As you're speaking, I'm echoing a story that Whitney Johnson told me about WD-40. And WD-40 is, I don't know, it's a $200 million company now, or $2 billion, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But the issue is like, okay, so what is the people in the company engagement level? It's like 90-something%.
Yeah.
And it's because Gary, the CEO, asks the employees every year to reinvent themselves.
Right.
So they have to go through an education process to literally reinvent themselves. And number one, you have no employees that want to leave. So you're not losing employees. And two, they love working there because of the fact that they're going through this personal reinvention process each year.
Yes.
And I think it's kind of brilliant. I mean, it sounds kind of like, well, why doesn't everybody do that? But most companies don't. You know, you would think, well, why wouldn't you let people explore what would take to reinvent themselves and then help them do that, right?
Yeah.
And the benefits are only going to quadruple fold the company as a result of that, because they're happier, more engaged employees. It's real simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you say there are barriers to climbing a mountain and that there are barriers to growing a company, we all get that. I'm helping a mountain climber who's done Everest twice write a book now.
Yeah, you were saying that.
And you can speak with our listeners about the barriers to growth in a company. What are those barriers? I mean, we've talked about some of them already.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We've already addressed the culture thing and the team thing and the whatever. But what would you, and we did talk a little bit about the finance thing, which is actually can be a big thing when it comes to growth. What would you say some of those barriers are that you could articulate to the audience?
Yeah.
And how might they address them?
So there's three barriers in my experience and research. It all comes back to the same three when we're looking to grow up a company. And you know, in particular, Greg, I don't say scale up, I say grow up. That's why all the word is grow, because we have to grow quite a few things. But the number one barrier, and I asked this question of hundreds and thousands of people over the years, and a lot of people say cash, they'll guess lots of things. But the number one thing is leadership. And most leaders don't want to hear that, going, what, I'm the barrier to grow the company? Yeah. And overcoming that, it's one of the reasons why where we were stuck in my first company was, it was stuck on us as the leaders of the organizations. We're the ones that get to make the decisions on the who, the what, the when, and the how. Whether it's cash, whether it's we're going here, but it's all about, at the end of the day, and you said it earlier, it's the who, right? Do we have the right leaders, number one? So do we have the right leadership team? If you're not asking yourself that, would you enthusiastically rehire every leader on your team right now? Think about that. And that's, that's definitely a question that was pulled out from Rockefeller Habits back in the day. The second thing is, do we know, and I run into this a lot, and I know a lot of companies, are we confident in our market dynamics? That's the second barrier. There is lack of confidence of the market dynamics, looking outside the business. And when we have lack of confidence in our market dynamics, it's really hard to actually create a confident, differentiated strategy. And so that's the second barrier. You're just going to keep doing the same thing. You're not going to get to your own dimension. You're not going to get and create your unique and valuable position where core customers buy at a profit.
I always love what Einstein said: keep doing what you're doing and expecting different results. And that's the definition of insanity. But there are so many companies that do that. And the leaders get comfortable. They're not uncomfortable with doing the same thing. And the companies plod along. They don't grow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
right.
Absolutely.
The biggest barrier, and, I'm working in a couple companies now, but the biggest barriers usually are the leaders of the company who aren't addressing what they really need to do.
Yeah.
And I frequently find that at a personal level, which I'm sure you get there, you're talking about all the personal elements, the soft edge. They're tired, they're beat up, they've got a lot of other issues they're trying to deal with, and they just don't want to put that amount of attention in the company because the company's just going to go along
Totally.
anyway.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So their
The
personal lives from a standpoint of like,
yeah.
are you exercising? Are you eating right?
Yeah.
Are you meditating?
Balance.
Are you doing all of those things that would give you the energy levels, because they run out of energy?
Totally.
Right. And that is a big one that doesn't frequently get addressed is, I forget what he's been on the show a couple times, all about energy management and performance.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the third barrier, which is why, like each one of these I've talked about is fully covered in this framework, because we knew of these barriers. We had bumped into them quite a few times in first 4 years of our business trying to figure this out. But the last barrier is really not having the infrastructure needed when you need it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we see lots of companies take off and then they sort of stall. And they stall because their infrastructure is trying to catch up. And then they go again and they stall again. And we've got to, and why this framework is built this way, it allows us to actually build up the infrastructure, both for our company, but also the systems as we grow up. And that's the third barrier. And we see it all the time with organizations. And that's when you see, the leadership one is the toughest. When I go in and work with an organization, and it's talked about in the story that's in the book and we talked about, usually the leadership team I start with may not all be there in about 4 quarters. Right? Yeah. Why? Because we're just, we're going to go through a period. Number one thing that I go in with a team is to ensure that is the leadership team that needs to be here for this time and for the growth that we're,
3 years from now, are they going to be the same ones
that's
are
right
there?
Usually not.
And there is going to be some heads that are going to fly.
Yeah,
and changes that'll be made.
It's difficult.
It is
difficult, but good.
It's difficult when the owners of the company are so personally involved with these people.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
So, you speak and gut it out, the kickoff, you speak about the key function flow map.
Yes.
Okay. And you state that this is a graphical representation of how a company makes money. Can you briefly describe this process to our listeners? And you don't have to get in huge detail. Just, what is it?
It's pretty easy to explain, because we talked earlier, what are the 3 things that winning teams have? It's, commitment to a repeatable playbook, open and transparent view of a scoreboard, right? And where we are, and a coach. The KFFM, the key function flow map, allows us to map out our business and put the things that flow through the organization, the things, not the dollars, the things that flow through each of the functions in order for us to make money. And it becomes the scoreboard. And so, simply and easily, teams that I work with look at this scoreboard every day. They have a daily score. They don't have a score 30 days after the month end. They don't have a score 7 days after the month end. They have a score in the moment so they can make better, faster decisions. And that's, if you think about on a sports field, any team that's out there, they're looking at the scoreboard throughout the whole game. So why wouldn't we have that for our functional areas and overall for the organization to see if we're winning or losing?
Yeah, most definitely. And your system is broken down into year 1, the foundation, year 2, the momentum, in year 3, the compounding year. Can you give us an overview of what's being accomplished in each of these years and where it is designed to leave the company after you install the Metronomics system?
Yeah, such a big, great question. So there are 3 phases to this. And in order, everyone starts out in the foundation phase, no matter where you come from, and it doesn't matter what you have going on. You'll start in the foundation phase, and how fast you will move through that phase depends on what systems you already have in place of, the compound growth system. And the key to get out of the foundation phase into the momentum phase is you've got to have execution and cash, those processes like working, like clockwork. The team works it, the leaders aren't in doing that anymore. We have to have the cohesive system at what I call a normalized level. It's sort of at the minimum level of cohesiveness. It means it's working, right? And we need to have, we call the 3HAG mapped out, which is the strategy mapped. If we can have those in place, and so that's why I say some teams get there sooner than, maybe it doesn't take 4 quarters, maybe it takes 2, maybe it takes 6 quarters, it might take longer. But as the team gets to that point, they move to the next phase. And the next phase is those systems will keep working, because they are, and we're going to add in the next level. And really the momentum phase, the big piece of the momentum phase, is validating your strategy. So you can, at the end of that phase, you can stand up. You'd stand up in a room of 1,000 people, and maybe half of them are your competitors, and you would state your strategy in a sentence, because there's not a hope they could copy it. You're absolutely on your own dimension. And so that's where the momentum gets going, because we have confidence. When we have confidence in strategy, we have confidence in our decisions. And so we start making them faster. And the more we share this out, cascade it out through the team, the more the decisions, we want the decisions to be made all throughout the company in the direction we're going. The last compounding, the company I was with yesterday and today, are in the compounding phase. And where they are taking the coach cascade system. They've got all the systems we've talked about in place, but they've got the dial turned up on the coach cascade system that really kicks in then, because the leaders have time to work on the strategy confidently, and we have a good strategy, and they have time to work with their leaders to actually grow them up as coaches. And this is the point where this team is. It's amazing to see this. The last piece to this is that there are, that's a suggested time frame in the book, and a lot of people come back and go, wow, you put a time frame to it. Yes, and I always say, yes, there's a time frame to it, but there's a critical human path of where we get people in the team to a certain point. That cohesiveness is important for strategy, because if we don't have a cohesive team, we will not have a healthy conflictive discussion around strategy and get the best strategy out there. So there is a critical path all the way through. Once we get a confident strategy in place, we're going to make better, faster decisions. The team's going to do that. And it actually frees up the leaders to then go work on the team members themselves. Not that they're not doing a little bit all the way. This is I called habit stacking in the beginning. This is stacking these behaviors all the way through. But this is the path that you can expect. And all it takes is a commitment to this process. That's all it takes. Commitment of the leadership to the process. And then come in eyes wide open, and it's an incredible journey.
Well, and I know you've studied many. I go back to the days of Peter Senge, Margaret Wheatley. And, I always remember she talked about the ecosystem, and all the books that I've read on business management and folks, they speak about alignment. But if you look at it scientifically, right, he said, what is in this ecosystem? In most ecosystems that are functioning, they take disorder and becomes order, right? Yeah. So you're basically moving from a state of disorder, which is what we were doing when I just used the coronavirus. The vaccine had the ability to attack the cells that basically were infusing the body and were affecting it. Any good physician can tell you we're trying to get an alignment and an attack against what's bad and put in what's good. And I think that's maybe a good way with what you're speaking about. Now, on our last question here, we want to kind of wrap this all up. You state that the purpose of Metronomics is to ensure that no leader is desperate, as you were, and when you were growing your company. And what are the 4 takeaways from the book that if a business owner right now wanted to implement today, I always say that, what is I'm sitting here listening to you. I've listened to this podcast now for 40 minutes that would help them remove stress and make them more successful. If you just said, here's 3 things you ought to do right now, go have a planning strategy session, look at your goals, short-term goals, whatever you're going to say. But what would you tell them?
Yeah. So the number one thing I would say is get more informed on this system. It makes sense. There's not, I think, a business person out there that says it doesn't make sense. There's easy ways to do that. 1, grab the book. You can read it, listen to it, all that. But 2, off the metronomeunited.com website, there's like a whole webinar series. It's absolutely complimentary. And we want people just to get in and understand. The second thing is, once you've done that, get your team together. Like, you've read it. If you're the CEO, you've read it. If you're one of the leaders, get the rest of your team to read it, because they need to understand, are we going to commit to this? Okay. So if there's commitment. The third thing is kick it off. Actually invest your time and kick it off. You can kick it off just with your team without a coach. It'll take a bit longer to get through it. Or you can kick it off, just, again, come back to Metronome United. We have 85 coaches from around the world who actually do this day in and day out. We have a ball actually unlocking the growth potential and the growth of every company and team we work with.
Well, it's a great way for an executive leader in any department of any company who's listening to this podcast to get started. Number 1, metronomeunited.com. Look for the free resources. The other one is, I held it up a second ago. I'll hold it up again. We'll have a link to Amazon. Buy the book. It's a great starting point, because the reality is the book can give you great ideas. The question is can you implement on those? You probably can on some of them, but you're going to want to get these, it's called online resources at her website.
Yeah.
And then most likely you're probably going to want to talk to Shannon or one of the people that she has working for her. Shannon, thanks for being on Inside Personal Growth, sharing some of your experiences, how you grew Metronome United, and what you're doing to help companies find and identify pain points, relieve those pain points, and help them grow through it and make their company stronger and better on the other side. It was great having you on the show.
Thank you, Greg. Amazing. Great questions. I've really enjoyed this discussion.
Thanks for being on.